How you guys doing tonight? All right. Man, I want to talk about this photo. There's a so-called black man in this photo. About sums it up for me about this whole situation. You know, I had a conversation with a guy friend of mine about the civil rights movement and what the purpose of the civil rights movement was. And when I gave him an answer on what the purpose of the civil rights movement was, he came back and he said that, why don't we just be separate? The separate but equal thing. But instead of being equal, let's just have our own. Let's just have our own land and have our own country or wherever. And I told him that's never going to happen, because your civil rights leaders of the past, when we were not born, that's not what they push. They push for little black boys and little white girls and little black girls and little white boys to go hand in hand and walk down this yellow brick road of this society. But you have to understand that the two things that's going to always and forever separate the races in these silly causes is racism and slavery. But back to the situation and we were talking about, I said that there's no way you're going to go back to that. Majority of black folks don't want to go back to that. And majority of white folks definitely are not going to co-sign on having a separate state or a separate situation. As much as people think that they do, in reality they do not. And of course, the government. Black people rely way too much on the government. One minute they hate the police, but in fact, they turn around and depend on the government. You see, the government is the police. He was hired by the government. So why are you so upset and angry at the police? You should be angry at the government for hiring them. But see, that goes hand in hand. And this is why you have things like this, where you have the Caucasians, or as I could say here on the article, white people are cashing in on the black struggle for equality. White people have always done that. I don't really even need to read the article. White folks have always done that. Remember rap music? You know, back in the days we used to listen to rap music and it will talk about all kinds of so-called black struggles. But then next thing you know, you start bringing in white MCs and everybody was holding hands with them. Remember, let's not act like we don't remember. You know, some of that Beastie Boys and was it Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch and Third Base. I saw a video with Max Kellerman, the guy from ESPN. He was on these videos. He was rapping. So, you know, and then of course you got Paul Wall and Eminem and all them. You know, then when those guys get in, and black folks automatically will say, well, they down with the struggle. They automatically niggas. And now that you look back at it, these white boys made so much money off of the black struggle, they ain't even thinking about you black folks. But see, that's what happens. Black people always do that kind of stuff. They always allow white people to come in and infiltrate this situation. So when my guy friend asked me about should we live in a separate society, white folks will look at you and say, nigga, have you lost your mind? That would not work. We don't want to be separate. Well, then people will say, well, the white supremacists want to be separate. Actually, the white supremacists ain't thinking about you. You want them to think about you. Those little so-called white supremacy groups and stuff, they're not studying black folks. You just want to be in the mix where you want a confrontation. Let's just keep it real here. Everybody always talk about hate crimes. Most of your so-called hate crimes is actually are done by the government. You know, that's where most of your hate crime starts. Far as whites doing stuff to black folks, is you want to talk about hate crimes and burning down churches and stuff like that. That's mostly about hate crime, but no one ever finds out who did it. You never ever hear about anyone finding out who burnt down somebody's church or business. They always say it's a hate crime, but you never find out who. But then when you really find out who did it, then you find out it was black folks. So yes, the government gets accused of hate crime for far as dealing with the police. And then you got so-called black businesses and people being attacked and making false claims about hate crimes and stuff like that. That's what you're starting to see. False claims and accusations. So when I see a picture like this, yes, there's money to be made on the black struggle. It's always been that way. Once again, you have to look at things in a three-dimensional way. As long as the word racism and slavery is involved in these situations, you will always hear me say this. As long as those two words are involved, you will always have a divide. And white people are going to agitate it. It's like getting a cut, and you're trying to get the scab to grow on it, but it ain't done yet. So you go over there and you peel it off, and it's still bleeding and hurting. That's what white folks do. They want to come in and take the scab off and make sure it keeps bleeding and not healing. That is what this situation is. Because the bottom line is this. If you want to solve this so-called racism and slavery, it has to be done in a way that people are not going to like it. And I'm going to say what those two things are. Either you go to war, or you get the financial reparations. Everyone keeps talking about reparations. But that is the only way that you are going to get anything out of it. It has to be through wealth, or it has to be a civil war between the so-called two races to get your so-called independence back. That because that you are oppressed because of slavery and racism. Those are the only two things. And we all know that black folks are not going to go out and start fighting, because black folks don't even know how to shoot a gun. Majority of black folks don't even know how to fight. And last but not least, I'm going to go ahead and say it. Too many Negroes are in bed with the other races. Let's just keep it real here. Majority of black folks are laying in bed right now with the other races. So there's not going to be any civil war. Now, as far as the money system is concerned, about getting the money, reparations, money has to be given if that is the case, because them sitting here holding up sign saying something about racism, that's not going to cut it. Them holding a sign up saying stop racism is not going to cut it. It has to be a financial gain. It has to be a financial situation. That's it. But we all know America is not going to give black folks no money. It ain't happening. America is trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars in debt, And majority of Caucasian people in America are either middle class or they're dead poor. So when you talk about getting money from white folks, ain't happening. You ain't getting no reparations. And you're not going to start a war. You're not going to fight it out. And you are not going to live in separate and be separate. You're not going to be that. You're going to have white folks like this who are going to say, we stand with you. We stand with you. We want to end racism right now. We stand with you. We need some money. Well, I don't have $5, but we stand with you. Look here, I need some money. I'm broke. I can't even feed myself. Well, if you was broke yesterday, you're going to be broke today. But we stand with you. In racism. In racism now. Yeah, black folks, that's what you're going to get, and that's all that you're going to get.